It was 5 in the morning when my worst nightmare came true. The sound that woke me up wasn't birds or an alarm clock. It was a violent crunch, sharp and final like the street itself had split in two. I yanked the blinds open and there it was. Brad Dawson's silver Mustang shoved halfway through my cedar fence, smoke-rising headlights flickering like the eyes of a dying beast. And before I could even process the wreck, his mother, Karen Dawson, the HOA president, was screaming that I should pay for the damages to his car. That was just the beginning. I live in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where lawns are cut to regulation height, fences are supposed to be uniform, and the HOA runs everything like a small dictatorship. I've dealt with petty notices before, garbage cans left out too long, Christmas lights still hanging in January, but this was different. That morning, Sam, my wife, was already pulling up the door camera while I threw on boots and went outside. The street reeked of burnt rubber and cheap air freshener. Brad stumbled out of the driver's side, lanky and glassy-eyed, phone glued to his ear. He looked at me and mumbled, "Crazy, right? Your fence just jumped out." I didn't even bother answering. The skid marks told the story perfectly. He'd taken the corner too fast, lost control, and buried my fence under his hood. Sam called 911 while I stood there in the cold, staring at the wreckage. That's when Karen came storming down the street in a silk robe like a budget supervillain. She didn't check on her son, didn't acknowledge the car jammed into my yard. No, she came straight for me. "Maddox, what did you do?" "That trap fence could have killed my Bradley," she shrieked. I kept my arms crossed, calm. "Your boy Tess drove my fence at 5 in the morning. That's what happened." Karen wasn't hearing it. She jabbed her finger at me, voice shaking with rage. "You will replace every board by sundown, or I'll fine you daily until you do." Sam's voice carried from the window, cheerful and cutting wave to the cloud. "Karen, you're on 3 different cameras right now." That wiped the smirk off Karen's face for a moment. But then the police cruiser rolled up and she pounced on the officer like he was her personal lawyer. "Officer, thank God you're here. This man's fence is illegal. It jumped out and destroyed my son's car. He needs to be cited, and he's going to pay for the emotional trauma this caused my Bradley." The cop blinked, looked at the skid marks, then at Brad, who couldn't even stand straight, and sighed like he'd seen this circus before. Within minutes, Brad was fumbling through a field sobriety test, failing spectacularly. A nitrous canister showed up under the passenger seat, and before long, Brad was cuffed and stuffed in the back of the cruiser. The tow truck hauled off his precious Mustang, and Karen's shrieks echoed down the street. You'd think that would have been the end, but Karen Dawson never loses quietly. A week later, a fluorescent notice was stapled to my mailbox, violation for unsightly property damage. According to Karen, my broken fence was my fault, and now I owed the HOA $1,750 in fines. She didn't stop there. She posted on the neighborhood forum accusing me of encouraging chaos by keeping dangerous, non-compliant structures. The picture she attached carefully cropped out her son's Mustang. Sam clapped back with the video clip of the crash and created a poll titled, "Did the fence jump?" with the only 2 options being no and also no. Within minutes, the whole neighborhood was laughing. Even Mike, my neighbor, who usually only cares about his perfect lawn, commented, "Aggressive fence remains domesticated." But Karen wasn't laughing. She called an HOA meeting. I sat quietly in that beige clubhouse while Karen puffed herself up at the head of the table, flanked by her 2 nodding cronies. She launched into a speech about community standards, how my neglected fence was a hazard, and how the board had voted fines against me. Then she smiled like a cat ready to eat the mouse and asked if I had anything to say before they made it official. I stood slow and steady. "Yes, I do. Thank you." One by one, I laid the receipts on the table, the police report showing Brad's crash, the insurance claim awaiting payout, the signed permit and inspection report approving my fence 3 years ago, and finally the original HOA approval form with Karen's signature at the bottom. The smugness drained from her face as I stacked the papers higher. "This isn't about a fence," I told the room. "This is about retaliation. The president of this HOA is trying to punish me because her son was arrested on my property. That's an abuse of power." The silence in that room was sharp enough to cut. Karen slammed her gavel, tried to regain control, but it was too late. The neighbors were murmuring the board looked uncomfortable and Karen's empire had cracks. For the first time, I saw her panic. But even as I walked out of that meeting with the upper hand, I felt doubt gnawing at me. Maybe it would have been easier to just replace the fence quietly and avoid the drama. Part of me wanted to let it go. Fighting the HOA is exhausting. Every notice, every fine feels like a hammer coming down. I remember telling Sam, what if we're just making it worse? What if she finds a way to bury us in legal fees until we drown? Sam put her hand on mine, firm and certain. Cole, we have the truth. And the truth is enough if we keep pushing. That's when the burner phone came back into focus. The cops had found it in Brad's car the night of the crash, and they didn't just bag it for nothing. Something about that phone rattled them. Sam dug into our footage again and noticed the custom rims, the spoiler the way Brad had been driving. He wasn't joyriding, she said. He was racing. They've been using our streets like a track. The thought chilled me. If Brad had plowed into a kid on a bike instead of my fence, we started connecting dots. A delivery van's dash cam caught Brad's Mustang and a couple of other cars staging the night before. Sam's drone surveillance confirmed it late at night. Groups of souped-up cars met at the HOA clubhouse. And they weren't just hanging out, they had a key, and they were working on their engines under the cover of darkness. There was only one person who could have given them that access. Karen. My frustration turned into a grim determination. This wasn't just petty HOA harassment anymore. This was criminal, and it was happening under Karen Dawson's protection. Sam and I set a trap. She built a fake online profile, Drift King 70-7, claiming to sell high-performance parts. Sure enough, one of Brad's buddies bit. We set the meet, handed everything to Detective Miller at the traffic division, and then sat in the dark, waiting while police boxed the kids in at a Home Depot parking lot. I'll never forget that call from Miller around 1 a.m. "It's done," he said. "We've got them all. Your evidence made this possible." Brad was among the arrested. In their cars, police found stolen plates, illegal mods, even a commercial storage unit key. That unit turned out to be a gold mine, stolen equipment, stacks of license plates, and a handwritten ledger. Brad's handwriting. He wasn't just some clueless kid. He was the bookkeeper of an entire little crime ring. The news hit the neighborhood like wildfire. At the emergency HOA meeting, Karen's throne crumbled. Her board allies resigned, the rest voted her out unanimously, and George the accountant was appointed interim president. But the real reckoning came in court. I sat behind the prosecutor as body cam footage showed Karen screaming that my trap fence had attacked her son. The dash cam footage played next, the drone video after that. Then the ledger. Piece by piece, the case built into an avalanche. Brad and his crew had no defense. Karen's last stand was on the witness stand itself. She painted Brad as a misunderstood boy pressured by bad influences. But the prosecutor pulled out the master key log. Karen herself had signed it out and never returned it. She stammered, lied, and finally cracked, "I was just trying to protect my son." But protection had become conspiracy. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on multiple counts. Brad and his buddies avoided long prison terms because of their age, but they got probation, community service, and restitution. The Dawson family cut a fat check for my fence. Karen Dawson, once the self-proclaimed queen of our neighborhood, was done. Her power gone, her reputation shattered, her house up for sale. And me, I didn't rebuild the cedar fence. I installed black steel with concrete bollards at the corners, simple, unmovable, and honest. A message carved into steel, not again. What I learned is simple truth doesn't back down, and neither should you.